All right, let's start our discussion of market planning and analysis with an introduction into what planning is all about. Here I have one of my favorite quotes, a quote from that my buddy Spike from the City of Las Vegas Planning um, Department likes to use. Fail to plan, plan to fail. And of course, at the top here, I have included a little bit of humor in my Jack Shabrowski's market planning title. The photo here on the left is from Disney's Toontown Planning Commission building, and of course that was the inspiration for me doing the thing at the top here. Of course, here's another one on the right, Department of Planning. This is actually an example of something that was photoshopped in. It wasn't actually that way. And okay, I've got one more. This is actually real. This is the College of Architecture and Planning, and you can see that that they have included a little bit of a joke in this whole idea also. Unfortunately, planning is perhaps a more serious matter, but I do think it's important to have fun as you go about planning. I have a couple of planning quotes for you. The first one is from Alice in Wonderland. It starts out with, "Would you please tell me which way I ought to go from here?" asked Alice. "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to," said the cat. "I don't much care where," said Alice. "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the cat. And of course, this is a planning quote because it really emphasizes the importance of needing a goal if you want to put a plan together. If you have no idea where you're going, then it doesn't really matter what you do next. But most of us are more goal oriented than this, and as a result, as we develop goals in our lives and at work and for new products or whatever, we do need to have a plan in terms of how to get there. I then have a quote here by General Dwight Eisenhower: "Plans are nothing, planning is everything." And I assume that most of you know who General Dwight Eisenhower is. He was, of course, the general in charge during which war? That's right, World War II. And he was in charge of what? That's right, Project Overlord. He was in charge of coming up with a plan to reinvade Europe after the Allied forces had been all driven to England and were across the English Channel from Europe, and Germany controlled all of Europe. And all Eisenhower had to do was come up with a plan to invade Europe. Of course, let's think through how this is all set up. So, all of the Allied forces are in England. The Axis, the Germans, know that they're all in England. But somehow Eisenhower has to come up with a plan to invade Europe. Well, the Germans do a lot of reconnaissance and spying, and so they're going to have a pretty good of idea as to what the Allied troops are going to try to do to invade Europe. So Eisenhower now has to come up with a clever plan to, in one way or another, um, surprise the Germans and invade Europe in a way that catches them off balance to minimize the potential injury and deaths for the Allied troops. Of course, the problem is everybody knows where they are, and of course, they are 30 miles from the northern France coastline, and so everybody thinks then that the logical place to invade Europe is across the English Channel. So it's going to be very difficult for Eisenhower to come up with a plan that surprises the Germans. But he does manage to do that. Now, this quote is really all about the process of planning versus the actual plan. The plan is, of course, the written document, and Eisenhower and the Allied forces had come up with a plan to invade Europe. But the important aspect of that whole planning process wasn't so much the plan, but all of the things that they had to think about and all of the things that they had to consider when they developed the plan. So the plan, while it was written on paper and was the blueprint for how they were going to invade, it was the process of going through the planning process that was the most valuable aspect. And so one of the things that we always talk about in planning is you can have someone from the outside come in and do a plan for you, and you'll have a plan, but you will have lost the value of going through the planning process. And so we're going to talk a lot this semester about the planning process. I have some other quotes here. If you don't know the past, you can't understand the present, and you can't plan properly for the future. Peter Drucker, father of modern management: unless commitment is made, there is only promises and hopes, but no plans. And of course, another famous quote is, to manage a business well is to manage its future. And of course, to manage its future, you have to have a plan as to where you are going and how you are going to get there. Then I have a famous Yogi Berra quote. Yogi Berra was a famous baseball player who used to make quotes that didn't necessarily always make sense. Here's one: we're lost, but we're making good time. I often consult with companies that I believe are a little bit like this. They're having some level of success, but they don't really know why and they don't know how, but they are at the present time successful. Eventually, that will catch up with them if they don't have a plan. And then I have one of my favorite quotes, and that is, goals without plans are just dreams. So let's say that you decide that one of your goals is to become the governor of Nevada. That goal is simply a dream unless you have a particular plan in place to make it happen. You want to become a professional basketball player. Well, to become a professional basketball player, it's just a dream unless you have a plan to get there. Many years ago, when I first moved to Las Vegas, Dr. Cross used to live right down the street from me, and every summer I would have my 3 nephews visit me from New York. And the 3 nephews' names were Carl, Clayton, and Nicholas. And Nicholas was the youngest. And Dr. Cross was over one morning. We were having coffee, and Nicholas was sitting there having his bowl of cereal for breakfast. And Dr. Cross said to him, "Nicholas, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And Nicholas said, "Well, I'm going to be a rap singer." Dr. Cross looked at me, and I looked at Dr. Cross. And Dr. Cross said, "Well, how are you going to make that happen?" And Nicholas said, "Well, when I get a little bit older," he lived in Brooklyn, New York. He said, "When I get a little bit older, I'm going to go into Manhattan every weekend, and I'm going to sing on the street corners until I get discovered." Well, about this is about the time when I want to interject a little bit of uncle wisdom and suggest that perhaps he ought to have a backup plan that includes going to school. But just as I started to get into the discussion, Dr. Cross said to me, well, that's pretty good. You know, he's a 12-year-old kid who has a goal and a plan to make it happen. Now, it turns out it might not have been a very good plan, but he was a 12-year-old with a plan to reach a goal. Some of you perhaps don't really know what you're going to do in your career, and so you don't have any career goals, and you probably don't have a plan to get there. So if you want to be a highly successful, rich entrepreneur, for instance, you have to have a plan to make that happen. Goals without plans are just dreams. I've been here at the university for a long time. We often have new goals that we set for ourselves. But in most cases, there is no plan to make them happen. And so when the officials say to me, did you see our new goals? I say, well, I did see the new dreams. I haven't really seen the new goals yet because I don't know what the plan is. And in any event, what is planning all about? All planning seeks to answer three questions. Which type of planning seeks to answer three questions? All planning. What kind of planning again? All planning. All planning seeks to answer three questions. All planning. And the three questions are, where am I? Where do I want to be? And how do I get there? And many of you have this. For instance, in the morning you get up and right now you probably don't have to worry about this, but there was a point in time when you have to get to school for your 10 o'clock class. And so you have to figure out, where am I right now? Where is school? Where am I? Where do I want to be? I need to be at school. And then how am I going to get there? Am I going to take the tunnel? Well, there could be, sometimes the tunnel's all backed up. Am I going to take Tropicana? Am I going to take Flamingo? Am I going to take Las Vegas Boulevard? Am I going to take Maryland Parkway? Am I going to take Paradise? All planning is all about answering three questions. Where am I? Where do I want to be? And how do I get there? The where am I, of course, is the homework. Where do I want to be is the goal. And then how do I get there is the plan and related activities associated with that plan. So where am I? Where do I want to be? How do I get there? Question one, where am I? Well, the where am I is the situation analysis. I have a little quote here by Albert Einstein. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solutions. So Albert Einstein's argument is that the planning process needs to focus on the situation analysis. Typical pieces in the marketing plan and marketing opportunity analysis, situation analysis, includes an industry analysis. What industry are we in? What are the success requirements for that industry? How big is that industry? Is that industry growing or shrinking? All the information about the industry is crucial. The second aspect of this is the internal analysis, the self-analysis. This is all about what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses and what is it that we do better than anyone else, and all of the other information for the internal analysis. The third analysis for the situation is the competitor analysis. Who are our competitors? How are we going to be able to compete against them for customers? Then, of course, we talk about the customer analysis. Who are our current customers? Or who are our potential customers? How many of them are there? What are their needs and wants? And how are we going to be able to communicate with them? The fifth aspect of this is the macro environmental analysis. And the macro environment is all of the aspects of all the things that might impact our success that weren't an industry related or internal related or competitor related or customer related. An example of a micro environmental issue that might impact our business success, of course, would be something like the recent pandemic. The pandemic has hurt certain businesses, but has actually helped other businesses be more successful. Businesses like DoorDash and Uber Eats and things like that. And then finally, with the situation analysis, we need to talk about planning assumptions. What assumptions are we making when we make our plan? The end result is a SWOT analysis. And the SWOT analysis, of course, stands for strengths and weaknesses, which are the internal aspect of a situation analysis, and opportunities and threats, which refer to all the other aspects, which include the industry, the competition, the customers, and the macro environment. They make up the opportunities and threats. Strengths and weaknesses internal, opportunities and threats external. The basic idea of a situation analysis is that unless the odds of making good decisions increase as a result of situation analysis, the information has no value. So the whole point of doing a situation analysis is to focus on the elements in the environment, in the situation, the industry, the competition, the customers, the macro environment, and the internal aspect that impact our likelihood of being successful. The analysis must be used as input into the development of the strategy and the plan. Otherwise, there's no need to collect the information. The major analyses include an industry, internal, macro, competitor, and customer. Now, in some cases, companies do a situation analysis and then ignore it and come up with a plan that is not based on the current situation. Of course, those companies tend not to be successful in their planning efforts. Question 2, where do we want to be? Of course, these are the goals and the objectives. That is sort of answering the question of, now what? Where are we trying to get to? Where do we want to be 3 years from now? Where do we want to be a year from now? Where do we want to be 6 months from now? This is a key question in all planning that needs to be answered after we understand where we are right now. At any given point in time, one objective must dominate a company's strategic plan. One of the things that we talk about a lot is that there are lots and lots of objectives someone might have, and you might have a number of objectives for a semester. Make money at a part-time job, do well in school, have fun since it's your senior year, on and on and on. But at any particular one point in time, one objective must dominate the company's strategic plan, because oftentimes objectives don't look like they are in conflict with each other, but in some way they are. This idea of one dominant objective helps us to decide how we're going to allocate our resources. Of course, setting goals and objectives, the goals should be realistic given the situation. And of course, something that I'm sure you've all heard of and we talk about all the time, and that is SMART goals. SMART goals are specific. That is, what are we trying to achieve? They need to be measurable. How are we going to know whether or not we are accomplishing those goals? They need to be attainable. They need to force us to reach, but they need to be something that we can actually accomplish. They need to be relevant. That is, they need to be focused on where we want to go. And then, of course, they need to be time bound. That is, we need to have a specific time frame in which we're going to try to reach these goals. SMART goals, setting goals and objectives. You could have economic goals. Economic goals that companies often have are sales related, or market share, or sales growth rates, or profits, or cash flow, or return on investment. A number of things like this could be economic goals associated with a marketing plan. There could be customer-centered goals. Customer-centered goals include things like improving the perceived quality of our good or service. Customer satisfaction goals. We could have awareness, acquisition, and retention goals. We could have brand loyalty or repeat purchase goals. Question 3 is, how are we going to get there? I'm currently in situation A, but I really want to get to situation B. How do I get from A to B? That, of course, is the strategy. Everybody thinks that they're good at strategy. No one wants to go through the effort of doing a situation analysis, but everyone wants to be the person deciding on the strategy. Strategy is the approach used to obtain a goal or objective. The essence of a strategy is to fit, select, discover, or create the appropriate approach to reach the objective. So for instance, let's say that you put a few pounds on over the pandemic and your goal is to lose 30 pounds. Well, you need to have some sort of a strategy to lose that weight. And to do that, you need to figure out what strategy will work the best for you to achieve that particular goal. Since strategies are designed to reach a particular objective, they are objective specific. One does not plan and then try to make the circumstances fit the plans. One tries to make the plans fit the circumstances. Of course, this is a quote by George Patton. And again, who was George Patton? Oh, that's right. Very famous general in World War II, perhaps America's most aggressive and successful battle general during World War II. All right, so now we have this. So sometimes you're going to see people doing planning with no situation analysis. So let me start with this question. So you go to Google Maps, and how does Google Maps work when you're trying to find directions? Let's say that we decide that we want to go to Disneyland. So you go up to Google Maps and you type in Disneyland. Will Google Maps give you directions? Well, not right away. The first thing Google Maps wants to know is, well, where are you starting from? So are you trying to get to Disneyland from Las Vegas, or from Phoenix, or from San Diego, or from Rancho Cucamonga, or from St. Louis? Because the way that maps work is maps come up with strategies to get from one place to another. Just like plans are designed to get us from one place to another. But for the map software to determine the best route, they need to know where you're starting and where you want to end up. Without the starting point, the maps have no way of being able to give you direction. So, in reality, maps are a strategy to reach a goal. I've been to plenty of planning retreats over the years, and I've run some, but I've been at way more than I've run. They often want to start with setting goals. And so you will go to the planning retreat and everybody will sit down. They will all have your name tags on. You'll have gone back and you'll get yourself a cup of coffee. My recommendation is to sort of sit in the back someplace and sit down and then watch what unfolds. Because very often what will happen is the facilitator will say, the first thing we need to do is identify where we want to be 5 years from now or 3 years from now? Where does the College of Business at UNLV want to be 5 years from now? Or where does our company want to be 5 years from now? And of course, people will start giving them advice in terms of where they want to be and all that sort of thing. And of course, they're doing this without what? Without doing a situation analysis. This is no way to plan. Now, you might ask yourself the question, why don't they start with the situation analysis? Well, there are a couple of reasons why consultants and facilitators don't like to start with the situation analysis. One is because the situation analysis is all hard work. To figure out where an organization is, where the industry is, who the competitors are and what their strengths and weaknesses are, who your customers are and who your potential customers are, and what's the best way to meet their wants and needs is hard work. It takes time, it takes effort, and there is no way to get around making all that effort. So first reason that they don't like to do that is because it takes time and effort. The second reason they don't like to do that is because the people who are in charge at the organization do not want to have to explain to the owners of the company or to anyone else, investors in the company, why they are where they are. No one wants to admit areas where they're not successful. Everyone wants to believe that they are in a better position than they really are. And if the consultant comes in and finds out that they are not and reports that to the people involved in a planning process, then somebody has to be responsible for why we are where we are. So those are two really good reasons why, the people who are in charge don't want a situation analysis, and the facilitator doesn't want a situation analysis. But here's what typically happens, and I've done this myself, is when they start this way by going through goal setting, you should raise your hand and say, ooh, pick on me, choose me, and hold your hand up until they finally call on you and say, don't you think that to do a real plan, of course the answer to this is yes, don't you think we should start with a situation analysis so everybody knows and understands where we are right now so that we can set smart goals to move the organization in the right direction? Sometimes the facilitator will say, yes, and I have that information right here. Most of the time, they will look at you and they will shout you down, and they will look at you and the facilitator will say, no, bad person, no. If we do a situation analysis, it will only limit our thinking in terms of where we would like to be in the future. And that's right, by the way. It limits us to realistic goals and objectives based on the current situation versus where we would like to be in the future. So they're right, except that without doing that, you're going to end up with unrealistic goals, and you're not going to be able to develop a plan, much like Google Maps can't give you directions unless they know where you are and where you want to get to so that we can connect those two spots. So what will happen then is you'll have been shouted down. And this is why I want you to sit in the back of the room, because the question then is, well, what should you do next? You can get up and leave and protest, or you can continue to argue with the people. But those are probably not going to be fruitful activities. My recommendation is that once you find out that they are not going to use the current situation as the starting point, my recommendation is go back and see what kind of continental breakfast they have. Maybe get yourself a bagel and some cream cheese. Get yourself another cup of coffee. Sit down in the back, and you can spend the morning surfing the web on your cell phone, or if you were ambitious enough to have brought a laptop, you can use a laptop, and you get some work done while they're going through this process, because it will not result in a usable plan. A marketing plan is a written document containing the guidelines for a business unit's marketing programs and allocations over the planning period. Most marketing plans are on a 1-year time horizon. I prefer a rolling horizon approach, and it's typically a 3-year rolling horizon. That is, I do a marketing plan every year, but I run the marketing plan out for 3 years. And so every year I update the plan, and every year I end up with a 3-year rolling horizon look at the business. And so that way I do a plan every year, but it's a 3-year plan that is updated obviously then every year. Most marketing plans are 25 to 35 pages in length. There are no one-page marketing plans. In summary, market planning and developing marketing plans takes time, thought, and effort. The first step in reaching your goals is to have a plan, because goals without plans are just dreams.